Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and that is correct. SUPAREE, who is sponsoring this video, sent me a brand new LED headlight assembly that I'm going to put in the place of my factory LED headlight assembly and give it a test. Like any product review that I do that is sponsored, I'm saying whatever I feel like saying. If the product's bad, I'm going to tell you. If it is good, I'm going to tell you. It's an honest review. And so far, all I've done is open the box to see what was in here, because at first it got this random Amazon package and I didn't remember what it was. So I took a quick look. But before we get into it, this is my LED headlight from the Jeep. This is the LED headlight assembly that came factory with my Jeep when I bought it brand new. And for a lot of people, they either have this or they have the halogen headlight assembly that you got with your Jeep when it was new. Now, this is all about Jeep Wrangler JLs and JTs. I'm sorry, guys. The JK, they do have assemblies for them. I'm not doing a review on them. I don't own a JK. I have a JL. So this is going to be for the 2018 and up vehicles. But this is the original assembly. This is my LED one. Like I said, if you have a halogen one, it's going to look very similar, but in the back, you're going to have an actual support where the bulb is sitting. This is just one big, huge plastic assembly. Now, for a lot of people, if you have the halogen headlights, you are always trying to find a way to get an LED headlight. Because a lot of people these days don't really care for the halogen head bulbs, because a lot of newer cars, it's all LED headlights. You can't see as much if you have a halogen one nowadays because everything else is 10 times brighter. So there are different options for you. You can either buy a set of LED bulbs that will fit into the factory slot in a plug-and-play type of system, or you're going to do something like I am about to do, which is get a LED headlight assembly. Now, these are a 9-inch LED headlight that is multi-changing color, meaning it can change to different colors of your choice. And that would be the running light colors. As you may have seen on some of the newer Jeeps that have the LED headlights, you have the halo that is always lit when it is just in driving mode without any of the other lights on. That is where the multicolor aspect of these lights comes into play. The running light, the driving light, if you will, is a different color of your choice. You can either choose either from the controller or the app. But before we get into all that, let's unbox this and see how it came. This came in another box that had this inside of it. There was no cushion in the other box. It was like an Amazon style box. So I opened this up, and first and foremost, guys, just like the off-road lights that I tested for them several months ago, these are pretty well packaged. There's lots of foam in here. We have instructions. I'm going to just push this right over here, okay? And there is one of the lights. They are stacked on top of each other, and it is packed in here pretty well with the foam. Now, the harness is just kind of freely moving in there. Take it as you will, but it doesn't seem to have scratched anything. And the headlight does have a little piece of film over top of it to sort of protect it. Now, if I can pull it out, here's our new bulb. As you guys can see right off the bat, if I take this one, there is a bit of a size difference in the width aspect of this. This is way shorter. This has the same casing as the off-road lights did. This is an aluminum hard casing with your protective bulb aspect there. And if you look, once I remove this covering, oh, there goes the newness of it. You can tell it's got a little bit different. It's got two different bulbs. You have aspects for the high beam, low beam, where this is just one kind of big thing, and then you have your halo. So let's finish unboxing all this, guys, and we'll get into more of the specs of this. And there we go, guys. Everything is out of the box. And what do we have in here? We have the instructions. The instructions, first off, tell you what comes in the box, how to install the lights, and also what features can be done via the app for the color changing parts of the lights. We'll get into that. You have your two headlights assemblies. You have a bag of bolts and screws and springs. Now, these are meant to replace the factory bolts if you so choose. And the reason they give you these bolts with the springs is so you can adjust where the beam sits on the light, supposedly. I'm going to test out both. We're going to use just the factory bolts on one end, the springs on the other, and see if it makes a difference. And before I throw the grill on, we will change them to whichever way I want them. Next, you do get a remote. So if you don't want to use the app, you can use the remote to change the colors. You have the hex tool for the new bolts and springs. Now you do have a wiring harness. Now these lights are a plug and play. Big plug plugs into your factory headlight area. That is part of the vehicle that controls high beam, low beam, tells this thing, hey, we want daytime running lights. The second plug with the green tip is what controls the color changing, which then plugs into said wiring harness. Now this little wiring harness can be ran two different ways. You can either run this the power, so black is your negative slash it wants to be grounded. That's what it says. Your red, they either say you can run it to the battery, or what they actually would like you to do is run this to the fuse box and plug this in. We're going to have to do some looking to see where this gets plugged into because, and I quote, this is not one of my favorite parts so far on this headlight assembly, is, as I quote, in the ACC connection method in step 3, we did not give a clear indication of where the connection is. Because we take into account that the ACC of different cars is not the same, if we must point out there may be a poor contact, we recommend that you follow your vehicle's manual to connect. Really helpful when every picture is a depiction of the Jeep all the way up to the fuse box and they don't tell you anything else. So far, that's one ding against these lights. Really? Now I have to play hide and seek on where the hell this gets plugged in? Not very happy about that, but we will soldier through. But this harness is what controls it. This can be controlled via the app or, like I said, the little remote that will control the color changingness to this. Now, this whole thing's part number, and I've got my notes so I get this correct for you, is SPCR 050RGB. It'll appear right there. These things have a 1-year warranty and a lifespan of 50,000 hours. Now, they do make a similar headlight to this that is just white light. That is just an LED white light, regular running light that's white, things like that. But this is what they sent me, so this is what we're going to test out. So now that this is all done, let's go to the garage and start the installation process. Welcome back to the garage, guys. Now, if you remember my last video, we went through how to remove the grille, change out the headlight assembly, a light bulb on your Jeep Wrangler JL, and put it all back together. At the moment, we are in the state of we have everything off and the headlight assemblies, the old ones, obviously, are out. We're going to go ahead and put in our new SUPAREE headlight assembly into here. For this first one, I'm going to use the factory bolts. This is a 10mm bolt. We're going to factory bolt this thing in using that hardware. And like I said before, here's the little plug. You guys will see it here better in a second. For plug and play of plugging in this light and working it. Remember, we still have to use that little green connection point for the color changing aspect of this light. Thankfully, because these lights are a lot slimmer, we will be able to put our hand down in here. But what I'm going to do first, obviously, is take the wiring harness, connect that green wire, and route it up here so that I'm not going to be fighting with it later on, trying to get my hand in there and have to undo the light. Just being smart. That's what we're going to do for this first light. Second light, we will attempt to use the provided hardware to see how it works. I'm going to do the harness sort of the same way, plug it all up beforehand, and then we will route it all out and figure out the whole fuse box aspect. But for now, let's go ahead and start installing these lights. Okay, like before, guys, I'm going to try not to cast a shadow over the little port here. But here's our light. This should be a simple plug and play, so they say. Just got to figure out where that plug wants to play. All right, it's plugged in. Next, like I said, if I can grab it, we're going to take this harness and and we're going to plug it in first, just so we're not trying to play the game of can I reach the plug later. Now with this harness, all right, so we got it plugged. Now let's plug this up into here. Maybe, possibly. There we go. All right, that's plugged in. Now we're going to take this, and because there's lots of space right here, I'm going to route this harness up here. Now we're going to take the light and rotate it and put it into its position here. Factory bolt. And I'm going to just get one of them started so it kind of holds the light in place for a second. We've ran into a slight little hitch with this. You cannot use the factory bolts on these lights. Because of the way these plastic little housings are on here, the bolt itself, the factory bolts, are not long enough to physically screw in and actually make a connection. So you do have to use their factory hardware. So we're going to see how that goes. Just a little note. The factory hardware, it will fit in, and it is the same thread count. It just takes a little bit to get it started for whatever reason. But I got it started, and now they're working just fine. So back to what we were doing before and installing this headlight. Now, if you're wondering, also, the springs go on the back side of the housing here so that when you run the bolt through and you start compressing it, it is adjusting with the help of the plastic casing pushing it into place. So I'm going to finish buttoning up this light and then we will do the next light. One thing I would like to note with these headlights in particular is, unlike the factory headlight assemblies that come with your Jeep, they tell you which one's right and which one's left. This does not. This you have to take it out and figure out which way they go. Now, a way I'm going off of is this little tab right here. It actually sticks out on the light. That is your lower corner for the light. So if it doesn't seem to fit on one side, it goes on the other, and it just easily fits up just like that, and then you can bolt it in. But that is one thing I did notice. I have searched high and low on these lights, and not one of them says which side they're supposed to go on. Just a little note for you y'all. I'm almost done buttoning these up. I just got to finish inputting this last light, and then we can start going on. Okay, now we have the headlights installed. What we need to work on next is this lovely little wiring harness. Now, another thing I would like to mention real quick is, remember, you had those springs in the spare, in the kit that I said you sit in there behind the plastic and you can adjust them. Remember, before you put your grill back on, you need to be in a dark environment, have your Jeep pulled back a little bit, something to where when you flip on these lights, you can adjust where the beam is kind of sitting. Because once you put the grill back on, you do not have access to those bolts, which is going to make it a bit of a challenge. So if you can wait till evening, just put your Jeep outside, or if you can put it in the garage and have enough space to actually see where the beam is hitting on the ground, then you can do your adjustments, get it to where it's happy, and then you put the grill back on. But just one thing to note, make sure you adjust those beforehand. All right, on to the wiring. Now remember, black is your ground, red is supposed to go into the fuse box. Now they are very kind in the essence of, in not knowing what kind of fuse box you have, though this is supposed to be specific to a Jeep Wrangler JL, they give you a ton of these little tiny adapters. One end plugs in, the other one has the actual fuse part that would plug into your fuse box. And then on the ends here, if you can see it, I'll bring you in closer, you plug the actual fuse into there. And what this is supposed to do is allow you to tap into your computer's fuse area. And then it's determining what fuse you need. Now on a Jeep Wrangler JL JT, I can tell you right now, they use what are called micro fuses. They don't use a regular standard old fuse. They use these tiny little micro fuses for the Jeep. I know this because I have blown so many fuses. I have figured it out. So I will just plug the fuse they give you, which is a 10, into the fuse box. Wow, that's a tight fit. Jesus. Okay. All right, fuse is all plugged in. Now what you'll do is you will take this, and it's easy. It's just a slight connection like that, and it has some waterproof covers that you can cover it up, and boom, your positive power, whatever you like to call it, is now connected up, and now we just have to find a home for this. This you can pair off of your firewall. Normally there is a bolt down on here that is already a ground spot, and so what I tend to do is use that for anything that needs to be grounded for the most part, and it sits right here for me, so that's where I'm going to ground this off. So let's figure out where this goes first before we ground them all off. Okay guys, I went with fuse F52 on the JLs and JTs. It actually runs the 12 volt cigarette fuse up in the front. Mine doesn't exist anymore because I have the auxiliary fuel tank through there, and it doesn't get power from that spot. So that is where I powered it, and it is a 10 amp fuse. So at least under here, we are good. This is where F52 is located. As you can see, that is how the wire is running. If we grab the fuse panel here, and I bring you guys in, it'll focus. F52 is right here. It normally is a 20 amp fuse. You don't need it because, unless you are like me, I don't have that 12 volt anymore, so we are good to go. And this right here is your ground wire. I'll probably connect that ground wire right over in here because that little bolt that is sticking out, you probably can't see it too well, is where most things are grounded. Okay guys, we are at that final point. I can just keep changing the colors on this Jeep all I want, which is kind of interesting. I've never thought of actually having lights that changed colors on my Jeep before. It's very interesting, I will admit, but they do work. And here in a second I will show you how the lights work themselves, the actual drive, you know, your high beams, low beams, things of that nature. But guys, it was a super simple install. Now, this video is not done yet. I'm going to test these out throughout the course of this week, and I will check back in with you guys at the end of this week on how they are working. It's been a week and a half since testing out these lights, and guys, honestly, they work really, really well. They are extremely bright, your actual night lights. They are extremely bright and mount up to my LED stock headlights that I had. They're just as bright as those, which is great. And having the ability to adjust them to point the beam down just a little bit more is actually a plus to me over the stock, because the stock headlights I can't adjust the beam downward any at all, and these being able to put it down at the ground just a little bit more has been super helpful, and it's probably a lot nicer to a lot of the other cars that are driving around you. But they work great at night. Now when it comes to the driving light halo, it is an aesthetic aspect. Does it do anything? Not really. It's a driving light, you don't really notice any of it. But if you're into the whole changing the color to match your rig or whatever you'd like it to be, it does work. I've had no issues with them. They had not flickered. They haven't had any kind of problems over the week and a half that I have been testing them. So it's great. And if, like I said, that's your thing, go for it. Like I said before though in this video, they do have just plain white lights where the halo is just white. You can't change the color. It's the same aspect, you just plug and play. It just doesn't have that whole little wiring harness that you have to hook into the fuse box, because obviously you don't need to have all these other colors, you just have those running lights. But guys, that is it on these lights. They work really, really well. In the description you will find a link to their site where you can find the lights. There will probably be 2 links, one that'll take you to their site on Amazon and one that'll take you directly to their actual website. Either of them, it's the same light, just one's Amazon, one's their website. Otherwise guys, thank you so much for joining me in this video. If you are in the market for an LED headlight, this is a great option guys. I have to admit, it works really, really well. Kind of like those off-road lights, they are a great alternative to having just either your stock headlights or having a different type of light out there. That is a great choice, and they're not overly expensive. These are a little more than obviously what the off-road lights were, but it is worth the price. I've had no issues, and how simple it is to plug and play with these guys. You can't ask for more, and they just work. That's the biggest thing with me. You guys know that. If the product doesn't work, I'm going to tell you, these just work. They do what they're supposed to do, and so far they have not let me down, and they brighten up the road, especially at night, and I can only imagine what they would do on the trail. You know, you're going to be able to see, and add on your extra lights on top of that, you're going to have an entire field of view at night. But thank you all so much for joining me in this video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. You guys are what makes this channel happen, and it helps me out immensely. Otherwise, I'll see you all next time. Take care, guys.